I have no idea where it came from. He may have brought it along from Canada. I don't know. But it sort of gets the blunt edge off of it. Just an old hand cranked stone.
Hey guys, it's Holly and I'm here again in Muddy Pond, Tennessee at Muddy Pond Variety Store and my grandparents' farm place, and I'm with my dad, Mark, and my husband and my children and my siblings and their families, and we are going to show you guys an old-fashioned hog butchering. We're going to go from start to finish and show in detail. My dad's going to explain in detail the whole process and the steps. So, Dad?
Well, yes, as Holly said, we're going to actually euthanize this pig here. We're going to dress it, scald it, peel the skin, scrape the hair off of it, and make all the different cuts, pork chops, link sausage, liverwurst, scrapple, all the above, all good dishes that I learned from my parents growing up. They're gone now, and just showing you a little bit of how things were done when we were growing up. And not only when we were growing up, my brothers and I, we still do this here at Mom and Dad's place, where where Dad had the setup here to do all this. And it's a wonderful way to feed yourself and your family, to euthanize your own pig or beef, whatever you're doing. In this case, we're going to do a pig and make all this, and instead of going to the store to buy all your meat, wonderful way to feed ourselves and not have to do that. Not criticizing anyone that has to go to the store and buy their meat, but it is a wonderful way if you're able to harvest your own meat.
But it also teaches, you know, my generation and my children's generation of a way to help take care of your family, and you know, you can depend and rely on yourselves. And so we hope you guys enjoy it.
But we've had a fire here under the scalding trough now for a couple hours, and we've got it at almost the ideal temperature. We're looking for about 147, 148, some say 150. But one thing we certainly don't want to do is we don't want to set the hair. So if you guys want to go ahead and take the lids off, or see where we're at on the temperature. We're checking the temperature.
Where's that chain at, Mark?
147. Let's move the hog a little bit here. Let's take the lids off. And so we put clean water in this morning. Holly cleaned all the old water out and put clean water in. But one of the things that Dad was always adamant about, he felt like we needed to use ashes in the water it helped the hair come off a little easier. So we've got us a bucket of water here, and I'm just going to sprinkle some of our hardwood ashes. And I guess probably the reason that those ashes help the hair slip off, you know, just a slight little bit of lye in there, it makes the hair slip off. Sort of makes the water look nasty and gross, but we're ready to roll the hog in if you guys want to take a hold and put it in the water.
You want to take the front end in first? No, just rolling. Just roll the front end first.
Yep, there you go.
Let his nose on down.
There you go.
That way they had a big old splash.
So we got the hog in there now, and water temperature being at the desired temperature, maybe a little bit cool, but it is so important not to set the hair. And so Jeremiah, he's one of the grandsons, he's got a hold of the chain, and he's just sloshing that hog back and forth, just not to get any hot spots on it, just to so it can keep it stir the water. Yeah, there you go, Eddie. So keep the water stirred. And here, just a little bit, we're going to pull it up just a little bit and get a hold and see. We don't have any hair slipping yet, so we need a little bit more. So, yeah, okay. It's starting to slip, so it's going to be good. Dad always said a slow scald was much better than a fast scald, because once again, if you set the hair, in other words, if the water is too hot, it makes the skin, it actually cooks the skin, and the hair sticks to that skin, and you can't get the hair off of that skin
Yeah,
You-
ear is starting.
you end up
Flip it over.
having to shave the whole hog,
Let's check the
and
hammer.
it's a terrible mess. Now this is the
white.
this is the old-fashioned way of doing it. Most slaughterhouses today don't do this kind of thing. They will hang it up and they take the skin off. This is the way Dad did
Flip
it.
him.
In later years, he did do a few. He did skin a few of them. So the boys got a hold of the chain now, and they're flipping the hog over to get the other side.
Okay, what happens is them legs get caught down there at the bottom. Definitely.
You can see here how the hair just
You got another strip?
peels off right there around that foot, because we are going to clean the feet and everything and cook them, use them in the liverwort.
Yeah, I'll work on it.
So we're going to completely clean these feet.
That head is always the hardest part.
Dad lived here on the farm, and to supplement the farm income, he would do this right here for other people. He would scald them, clean all the hair off of them, hang them up like we're going to do this hog, and then quarter them up. And people would take the quartered up meat home and process it themselves. Dad did not. He did not process meat for other people at all. You know, the customer, and then Dad got a fee for. He just called it quartering up a hog. That was basically doing what we're doing right here.
Right.
And
Look right here, John. Show the camera here. Them little nails, you just take them off with your hands.
Water is perfect temperature that the little toenails come right off.
Let's see if the other leg's ready. Give me a minute, Jeremiah. Yep, that one came too.
Should we check the hands on the other side?
Yeah, need to check them pretty quick. Mark, check it too.
Yep, it's perfect. Use the chain and this handle here. And we're just going to bring that hog right out of that, up onto this table. And now we're going to let the children and the great-grandchildren come in here and scrape and get the rest of that hair off. And some of us, let's put those lids back on just to make sure nobody falls in that hot water, because it can be very dangerous.
There you go. Just like you're doing.
Nathan, you notice this right here has that turn, right there, that goes in the middle. Yeah. That way, somebody gently steps on the lid is strong enough to hold you.
Here's the other lid.
There you go. Good job. Oh, yeah. You mean in here?
But Dad, a lot of times he would do 8 of these for customers in a day. And it was a good little side income for Mom and Dad when they, Dad never worked any public work and, basically lived off the farm here. And this was just a good little side income for him. When he was young, he was a strong man, and he could handle them big hogs like a little pig. Estimated maybe 360. Somebody thought 380. But guys, do we want to put the scales on and actually weigh it? We can do that. Yeah, we can put the scales on and actually weigh it. But somewhere in that neighborhood, we'll say 350 to 380.
We got a hammer full of claws.
Holly, do you know anything about the hammer? There it is. Yeah. Yep. Here she goes. Yep. Holly found it.
These are the bigger nails. They don't come off as easy as the small ones do. You gotta.
But just use that's the way Dad did it. Use the claw of a claw hammer.
Get on the.
You can
front
step
end.
on that, Nathan.
Yeah, there we go.
Would the nails be good dog treat?
Yeah, probably would.
Yeah, it would make it easier on
Let me come here to the front and show you how Grandpa used to do it. So let me have this end. You go in the middle and grab a hold of a front leg and the back. So we're just going to lift it over this way right here. Now we're going to just scoot it back. Like that. And flip it all the way over. There you go. Now then, finish cleaning that side and pull the toenails. And so I'm going to use this wonderful water hose here, but when we were little, in later years, Dad did have this hose, but when we were little, didn't have a water hose. He just had a bucket of water. Okay, so what I'm doing here now is cleaning up the back legs a little bit, because I'm going to get Eddie to do that. We all can do it, or us boys could, but I'm going to let Eddie cut the center tendon out of the back leg, and that's where we're going to put those hooks in. But right now, what I'm doing is basically cleaning all the skin and hair off of these feet so that once we hang it, it's going to be difficult to get to clean it with those hooks hanging there. So Dad always cleaned these real good before we opened it up to that pendant from where the hog was hanging. So basically you can see what the foot looks like, and you just take your knife and start cleaning all that and get all in there in them little toenail places. It's important to have a good sharp knife, and you can do a good job just scraping it clean, and then with a little. So the reason that Heather asked why to take the toenails off. In today's world, these feet are rarely eaten. There's some people that still do, and there's some stores you can still find pig's feet where people eat these. But in our family, we were taught not to waste anything, and you did not throw the feet away. So, waste anything, I should stop there. We're not going to eat the toenails, but we will cook and eat these feet. And there's various ways that you can fix these feet. You would actually cut them off like right there, and the rest of that would be the ham hock. But can I have a little water? Where's the hose? When we were growing up, Mom a lot of times would pickle these feet. I'm not sure what the recipe was. I missed that. I didn't get that. I wouldn't know how to pickle these feet, but Mom made pickled hog feet a lot of times, and I loved it. I'm not sure that all my siblings liked it, but I did. And but in this case, we'll see if when we go further on with the butchering, we're going to put these feet in with all the deboned bones and the head, and we're going to cook all that and make something called liverwurst. And so that's where these feet are going to go in. Not that they have a whole lot, rinse me just a little bit. Not that they have a whole lot of value to eat, but one thing we have learned that by putting those feet in with that liverwurst, there's a certain gelatin in with these feet that makes that meat hold together. And it's just, I don't know, it's just a pretty good dish with it. A lot of people are going to say gross, but it is an old way that people, well, my parents and especially grandparents and great-grandparents, they grew up in hard times, and they didn't have anything to eat. And if they didn't preserve everything that they had, it's not like they had money that they could go to the store, even if the store would have had it. They didn't waste anything. And that's the reason that it was these feet and all that stuff was eaten, and the heads and stuff. So I've got that pretty shiny, pretty good and clean. And Eddie, I think this knife is good. I'm going to let Eddie do the next step.
So literally there's a tendon right in here that we're going to expose and make it to where we can hang it up. So you just cut into that thing down to the bone, which is not far, and then the knife on the other side of it down to the bone.
And look at that.
Get your finger right.
And that tendon is strong. You could tear that hog in half, and that tendon won't hurt, won't break.
That's right. It is critical if you do this too far back, you can't hardly get your fingers under there. You just have to open it further between the little toenails to get it to cut in deep enough to where you can access that really easy. Yeah, just a little bit there. All right.
Okay, so Jeremiah is one of the grandsons here, and he's got the thing there to hook them in, and Eddie's hooked the bottom one, and then we're going to unhook this one and put it through there like this, just like that, and then hook it back into that, and somebody's going to grab the chain hoist. Now, a chain hoist is something that Dad always had. So what we're going to do now next is Eddie's just rinsing the hog off. Again, the garden hose there is fantastic, and we actually have a water heater down here in the basement, and that's warm water that we're using there. But like I've said over and over, when we were all young, he didn't have that. He had a bucket of water, and he'd slosh cold water on that.
I do remember the days when we were butchering and did not have a water hose.
So I'm going to show you guys the grandsons and the great-grandchildren. What we're going to do is take your knives, y'all can come around this hog and just start scraping them. And that scrapes any leftover dirt and hair off of it. So young guys, go at it. But it was always a fun time for when we were young. all of us brothers. We just got one sister. I don't remember her ever coming out to any kind of hog killing.
Rinse it all off again, and it gets rid of all that stuff you've already scraped. It exposes what's not done yet.
Young guys, you see all this dirt right up here? Y'all have to scrape a little harder. This is the way Grandpa did. He put his hand on the knife and the other hand on the blade and in a serious way scrape it. Y'all see how that is shining that meat up, that skin up? I mean, seriously. Scrape that thing. That's exactly the way he would clean a hog. And then here you see still a little bit of hair. And you start at the top again. You keep on bringing that down and rinse with a little water, somebody. Okay. Watch it, guys. He's putting a little water on. But a little fresh water.
That was probably one of my worst pet peeves. I'd be scraping a hog, and Dad would come along, never say nothing.
He'd start spraying or throw water on it. Oh yeah. The job had to be done. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
But you can see how that is shining that hog up. The scald was just beautiful, no set, and the hair is coming off of this. Really a nice hog. And see these tight spots right here? You got to learn how to, you turn your knife just right, and that gets all that hair and dirt out of that.
Is it okay if you cut it?
Of course, this many knives around, you got to be real careful. You'll cut somebody. And then raise this up. Well, we're going to next, when Eddie gets that leg cleaned, one of us is going to take the head off, and I think Jeremiah is real good at that. We're going to let Jeremiah take the head off of the pig. And then we're going to clean the head, and we're going to open the hot pig up and take the intestines out. And then we're going to quarter it up, and we're going to clean some intestines and all that kind of good stuff. In later years, Dad did have a cooler here, but before the cooler, it was very important for it to be cool weather. Otherwise, you couldn't get rid of the body heat in the animal, first of all, and then you'd have flies around. So you always wanted to choose cool, cold weather to butcher hogs. Yes, and so very important because we're going to quarter this hog up, but it's important for the body heat of this animal to be released and chill it down before that we actually process it and make the sausage and all that like we're going to do later. Yeah, it would spoil. Otherwise it would spoil. Yes, yeah. Great. So we've got the hog pretty well cleaned all the way down to the head, and we're going to let Jeremiah is going to show us how that Dad used to turn the pig around a little bit more here so they can be seen. How that Dad always took their head off, and Jeremiah is one of the ones that learned it very well. And might be a little gross to some, but it's just cutting the head all the way around. Cutting all the meat and the muscles and fat that's on it, just cut it all off.
You don't see the flame. You take all of it off.
But it is part of the process of harvesting an animal to feed your family, like Mom and Dad did, like we still do. That's just part of life, is to go through this to feed ourselves.
That's pretty decent.
So Heidi, if you'll move, we're going to put the head right there on that little table. If you'll walk it out there, Jeremiah. And Jeremiah and Eddie are going to open it up and take the intestines out of it.
Jeremiah, how many times you done that?
Many, many times, right?
At least every Christmas for at least 10 years.
How old are you?
29.
So you started about 19 doing that when you was 19?
Oh, before that.
No, I started when I was
12, you did that, 12?
Yeah. Yeah, so he started here helping Grandpa, and he learned it from Grandpa.
Now your dad, you're the son of who?
12. Judy.
Judy, okay.
So there's 8 of us, 7 boys and 1 girl, and Judy is the girl, her sister, and Judy is Jeremiah's mother.
Okay.
Judy is Jeremiah's mother.
Got you.
Yep. So Jeremiah is gonna start by cutting out the rectum there and start splitting it open, and he'll turn and come here and open up the center of it. But I think he likes it so good that if he had the option, had the opportunity, I think he would like to do it for a living. And as you can see, he's good with that knife. But he learned it all from his grandpa. So we are going to use a handsaw here, just like Dad did when we were growing up. Later on, a power saw came on the scene, and we're also going to use that today. And in later years, Dad did use that power saw.
All we're doing here is splitting this part, splitting the hams apart, so he can gut it.
And then open.
Then we're gonna open up the chest.
You're going to give it open heart surgery there.
Well, it's been a day or two since I've used a handsaw on this.
So he's just splitting the bone, the chest bone. And once he gets inside there, and he's right there, and it's cut all the way back.
Might need to get a little bit further there.
Nope, it's good. It's good. And all the way down. And now Jeremiah is going to come back and put his expertise to work.
Need you an apron.
Put my arm in here with a knife.
Because if you don't, there's danger of hitting the intestine.
And then you have feces on meat, and you want to try to avoid that as much as at all possible. So he just took out the kidneys. I guess that is one of the things that Mom and Dad never kept. It was always, the kidneys were always thrown away, but we always threw them away. And then another thing that you're going to see here, if you'll step back a second, Jeremiah, this is the milt. We are also not accustomed to keeping the milt, the spleen. Now there is quite a bit of lard around that.
Called caul fat.
Caul fat. Now Mom and Dad always kept this, and let's go ahead and cut that fat off of it. And we're later in this process, we're going to render out lard, and this is going to be part of the lard rendering, and we'll make cracklings with that. But that spleen will be separated from it, and we're going to throw that away. Then the next thing that Jeremiah is coming to, here's the liver. Right there's the liver. We're going to use that liver in the liverwurst. So he's going all the way down to the bottom now and opening up the chest cavity deeper to bring out what Dad always called the goozle. It's actually the throat part that goes in, the breathing part that goes into the lungs, and then also the other piece is here that went to the stomach. So what Jeremiah is doing there is basically the same thing that we did to the whole hog. Just scrape all the remaining hair and dirt off of it. That's what he's doing. And then when he gets around there far enough, he will cut the ears off and clean out all the inner ears and including the eyes. Here in just a little bit, when he gets the whole head clean, then he will get to that. Okay, so what I'm doing here now, after I've basically rubbed with my fingers most of the feces out of the intestines. Now then I have this board here, and I have Mom always said it was important, and believe it or not, Dad did not do this. Mom did this, and she always said it was important to use a butter knife that was not serrated. And I can see why. If you had a serrated knife, it would rip these intestines. So what I'm doing now is just scraping the outside, and there's an outside skin that's coming off, and also you see a ball forming down into those intestines there because they are hollow. They don't look it, but they are hollow, and that is still remaining feces inside, and also fat layers and that kind of thing. And so I'm just moving that on down. Keep it in warm water. That makes it move much better. Maybe pull on it a little bit. You have to be a little bit careful because it is slightly fragile. You can tear holes into it, and when we get to the sausage stuffing, it's very easy to bust these. They're not high pressure strong. They're very, very fragile, very weak. And so I'm going to keep doing this right here until I get it all the way down to the other end, and then I'm actually going to show you another little technique, and I'm going to turn these things inside out. So far we've cleaned the hog quartered it up, quartered the center, opened the center part of it, and got the intestines out of it, and took the head off. And Jeremiah is here behind me working on cleaning the head. I am here cleaning the intestines. And this is another one of our brothers. His name is Pete. He is actually Doreen's husband. And he is going to split that hog and cut the pork chops out of it. And going to cut it all the way, split it down the middle, and cut 2 sides of pork chops. So Pete, why don't you turn that hog a little bit, this way, so that you can see you.
Do we have a saw here?
Yeah, we have the saw, but we're going to also want to do part of it with a hand saw, like Dad used to do. So okay. Pete is going to show you there how.
So the first thing to get the pork chops, so that the pork chop is part of the loin, and so you could get hog loin without the bone, but when you leave bone with it, then you've got chops. So they're here in the side, on each side of the backbone, from about here to somewhere about in here. And so a lot of the native people here would do what's called backbone. Then you would just cut a strip out this way and take the backbone out, and then you would have tenderloin and backbone. We grew up doing pork chops, and that's what we're acquainted with, so that's what we're going to be doing. So first thing we do here is we have to go around that tail a little bit, and we split it as accurately as we can, right down the backbone. I know I'm not going perfectly straight, but it'll all taste the same in the end. And then we go in here, we stick the knife all the way through to make a little hole from the inside, and you'll see why in a minute. And we cut this really wide, cut the skin really wide here. Now we're getting down about the end of the loin, and we wheel in with it, come in with it. And we do the other side. Width, how wide you have to do this, because the fat is quite forgiving. So once we cut the bone, it will all work out. Now, they haven't taken out the rib fat yet, so we'll be doing that in a minute, but it works best to open the animal up at least part way. We're going to be splitting it down the spine, down the backbone as close as we can. Which saw you think we should use here, Mark? This one?
No, well, you can use my power saw. It's right there, but Jeremiah actually brought a stainless steel blade for it. If y'all want to put that in it.
Well, that one is the fastest by all means.
And then the saw laying on the table over there. I want to show how Dad
So
used to
I've
do it
already got the fat cut through, but now you need a saw of some type or another to cut the bone.
If you'll stop a second there, Pete. Hey, Pete, stop there and use the hand saw and show how Dad used to do it. Is that hand saw right to you right there? Right there beside
this one here?
Yep.
Okay.
We already used it on some other stuff.
Okay.
But Dad sawed all his hogs apart just like that.
And as we were boys growing up, we helped him with this, and we did a many one of them. We didn't have power saws till after we were grown. And even then, he didn't use a power saw that much. Well, in later years he did, because he found out how much easier it was. But if you have a really good sharp saw, you'd be surprised how quickly you can cut a hog in two like this. Now a beef, that's a different story. So I'm not going to cut that through quite all the way, simply to give it some support while we're cutting the ribs off on the bone, so we have some stability. Otherwise, the sides want to flop around all over. So we'll stop with that for a second. And we're going to take out this stuff in here is called the rib fat. So we take the knife and just make a cut, get started and get a hold of it. You can just peel it right out of there.
What do you use up for?
We will mix that in with the rest of the fat when they're doing the rest of it, and
make cracklings
render
with
it down and make cracklings out of it. It's called a rib fat.
It is a little bit of a softer fat than the back fat is going to be, but mix it in with the back fat, you can't tell it in the cracklings.
Right.
I say you can't tell it unless that you accidentally overcook the cracklings a little bit. The rib fat being a little softer, a little more tender, it will brown a little more than you would like for it to.
Now, some of these little things I'm cutting out here, just some little polypses of, Dad always called them glands. I don't know for sure what kind of glands they are, but we don't eat that. This will go into enteral waste wherever that is at. Now, a lot of people think that this is the tenderloin on the back, when technically it's not the tenderloin, it's the back strap. Right here on the inside where I'm running my hand on, right here, this is the true tenderloin of an animal right here. On the inside, both sides have got one. So deer, hogs, beef, well, I don't know about a beef so much, but especially a hog and a deer, they have a small tenderloin. Now this is precious stuff right here. This is really, really good. We leave that attached to the pork chop. So now what I'm going to be doing next is make sure my hole is big enough here to get my sauce started. On each side. Make sure my knife came all the way through. Okay, so what we're doing here, we're going wide in here to make sure we get this little loin I was telling you about a minute ago, so it comes along with the chop. And there's kind of a fine line. Well, I'll just keep cutting, then I'll show you in a minute. But let me go ahead and get the other side and we get it all opened up. Then I'll get a little more technical with explaining. Just a little bit more of that off of there. Now, one thing about doing this, I don't believe everybody takes the pork chops out in this manner. I think some people split the animal in half.
But we're basically just showing today how Dad did it.
Yeah, we're basically,
we are basically showing today how Dad did it.
I wanted to emphasize
there are
that
different ways of doing it.
there are different ways of doing this, but we're keeping up. This is how we learn to do it and don't really know a different way of doing it. This is what we're doing, the way we were raised up doing it. Go ahead and finish splitting this on down. Okay, now the bone is all cut. Go ahead and take the knife. The knife just does a smoother job on the meat itself. So there, the animal is split in half. Now, and a good sharp knife can't put a price on it. We've got a little bit of bone in there.
We did very little hunting growing up. Very, very little. I guess Mom and Dad were both not very fond of guns, and we were. Dad had that little single shot rifle, but otherwise
22.
Yeah, otherwise we really weren't even allowed to have guns. I guess they were afraid of them and afraid what could happen, and I guess because of that, hunting was somewhat discouraged when we were growing up. We pretty much just raised and butchered our own meat for our own use. Yes, very little hunting done during our growing up. Yep.
But in later years now, at least my boys have been very active, especially deer hunters, and we actually trap and or shoot a lot of wild hogs. We have a lot of wild hogs in this area, and they're a nuisance, and we do a lot of that. We have killed our share of them.
Do you ever process those?
Because of the amount of them, there's so many of them, we usually just give them away. We eat one now and again ourselves, but we usually just give them to people, anybody that will have them. Occasionally we end up pitching one or two because we just can't find people to take them. But they make good sausage, but our experience with them has been, if you cook them, they're strong. They have a strong smell to the meat. They taste okay, but that smell of cooking them is just hard to get past that. But they make good sausage if you'll season them right. But they're very lean. They don't have a lot of fat like a hog like this would. I've been thinking about a lot, about saving a few of the wild ones up and have the meat, and then when we do some tame ones, mix them together and make sausage out of them and put lots of fat to it and see how that would work out. I think that would do okay on that. Okay, so what I was saying earlier about these pork chops, there's kind of a fine line here. See, I messed up a little bit, left a little bit of loin there, but that's not bad. If you don't go deep enough into the ribs, you'll end up losing some of the loin, which in turn becomes a pork chop. And if you go, like I said, too far this way, then you'll end up leaving quite a bit of the loin on the ribs, which I guess would make the ribs a little better. But anyway, what were you going to do with this now, Mark?
I guess we're going to
put them
carry
downstairs?
the chops down in the basement. Yes. Maybe Tim can help you carry them.
So we'll grab this right here and just finish cutting that off. And those sharp hooks in there, just gouge it up here in the top somewhere. Just make sure that it holds. So we've got some really sharp hooks right here. And I mean, they are sharp. You just simply hang them and snug it down a little bit. Snug that down a little bit, and they'll hang here and chill out until maybe later today or tomorrow, whenever they cut them off. You take this skin off and trim up the neck part, and then let the chops set up a little as far as getting stiff so that they slice better. And we actually usually stick them in the freezer for a couple hours, just the way they are, and let them get good and stiff and chill down. Then they slice a lot better. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is take the ribs, what's left out of them. So you don't get as many ribs this way by doing the chops as you would with doing the tenderloin. But anyway, you get started here. Some nice looking meat there, isn't it? I remember so well, Dad was good at this. Let me tell you, there's a real art to taking these ribs out, and I still remember how he could just divide those ribs from the bacon. If you make a mistake and gouge your knife in this way, it cuts into your bacon and ruins your bacon. And he was always particular about that. He always said, boys, don't you ruin them bacon. So I just cut myself a hole there in the ribs so I got something to hold on to. I poked my finger through it. And you just keep, so there's a layer of meat. You want good ribs, but you also want good bacon, and you don't want to ruin either one of them. So you kind of divide it right down through where the right layer is. There you have a side of ribs. And of course they'll get trimmed up and cut the loose meat and stuff off of them. And then we'll slice them. And
I think we all learned every part of it, but I will say what Pete is doing there, Pete and Eddie were much better at it than Jonah and I were, which is another brother of Benny.
Well, it's probably because we spent more time at it later after we were grown. We worked a lot with Dad. Now, we learned to do this when we were young, but in the earlier years when we were quite young, Dad didn't let us do this part. We did the hair scraping and, of course, killing them and scalding them, cleaning them, and scraped them and took the entrails out while he was cleaning the head. I'm talking about when we were doing several a day, and he would clean the heads, and then he would usually do this part.
For the most part, he did that, what Pete is doing right now.
But he usually did that until we got older, and he'd kind of watch us, and he figured out we could do it.
Because you could so easily make a mistake and cut into the pork chops or into the bacon and mess somebody's meat up,
Especially when you were doing it for other people.
Yeah, especially when we do it for other people.
Doing it for other people, they're counting on you to do a good job, and then you mess it up. Well, you can't really go back.
So it took a while till Dad would allow us to actually do what Pete just did now.
But in the later years, after Dad wasn't as able anymore, and I was grown, I would help a lot. He still did a few in later years, but then we gradually took over on it. We used to not eat those brains, but Eddie kind of got started eating those brains, and a lot of times we'd be out here killing hogs. This is in later years, after we were grown and married. And he would take the brains out and he'd take them in the house and Mom would fry them. And in a few minutes we'd have fried brains and we were eating them while we were still out here working. And so it does. It really tastes a lot like.
Yeah, they're quite tasty.
They're really good.
Yep.
It's mainly you got to get past the idea of eating those brains. It's just, you know, they're good to eat. You just have to get past that idea. It's just something about it.
Everybody in the family eat it?
No. I don't think everybody would eat them, but I think most of us got to enjoy them.
So what's your favorite part?
My favorite part?
Yeah.
Of the pork?
Yeah, the whole pig.
Probably the ribs.
Ribs?
I love the ribs. I really do. But that bacon, I tell you what, that cured bacon is hard to beat. I don't know. It's kind of be a hard tie there.
You might say we eat everything but the squeal.
Just about. Well, you did see us throwing the kidneys out, and we did throw the liver out because it had spots. The milt, we threw the milt out, and the sweetbread. Like I said, Mom and Dad did not eat the sweetbread or the milt. I'm not sure why, but or the kidneys.
I always thought the kidneys and that sweetbread would be good, but we just never eaten them. I don't know. I don't think they would taste a whole lot different than a liver. In fact, I don't think they would have quite the livery taste either.
What other animals do y'all process?
Of course, beef. For the most part, beef and hogs. And now then, in recent years, you know, the younger generation, they've really done a lot of hunting, and so there's been lots of deer butchered here too. And then, of course, wild hogs. But that's, as far as sheep or goats, I don't think we ever did any, did we?
I don't. I remember that Dad did a few sheep for other people, but for ourselves, I don't recall that we ever did any sheep for ourselves.
I don't remember.
Maybe when we were boys, I can't remember. But there was a stint when we were younger, we did have sheep. Yeah, you wanted to make sure you had the hog in a place where they didn't get out, because if they ever got out, as most people know, if the hogs get out, there's usually no such a thing as just driving them back home. It involves the whole family. You have to get plenty of help, and they run and dive and dodge.
It's sort of like herding cats.
They slip.
It's sort of like herding cats.
They slip between your legs and they get away. They go any way they can imagine.
Yeah.
And they're quick too. You think you've got one cornered, and then you try to get him by the leg, and he slips out from under you and
squeal and run between your legs, and like they're laughing at you, and get gone. Dad used to raise a lot of hogs for us children, but he got older, and
the last few years before he passed, he just wasn't able to anymore. He couldn't do it.
I have raised them in my barn, but it's a lot of chores and a lot of hassle.
It's easier just to buy one.
It's easier to buy a pig, already raised.
It's not only that. It's gotten to where the feed to raise a hog is so expensive that you can actually buy them cheaper than you can raise them yourself, honestly. Now, if you have a lot of slop, if you have a lot of organic scraps and stuff to feed them, that goes a long ways. That's worth a lot. And that was one of the things, you know, growing up, Mom and Dad always had. Oh, they'd have a bucket full of slop every day didn't they?
Yep.
I mean, kitchen scraps and whatever.
They had there was a slop bucket in the house all the time.
And so every morning when Dad would go feed the hogs, he'd take that along and feed it to them.
Mostly ear corn.
Usually some ear corn. Sometimes he would swell the feed. I don't know if you know what I mean by swelling it. You would take a bucket of feed and fill it about 3/4 full and dump, maybe a gallon or a couple of gallons of water on that and let it soak up. And that feed swells up and it becomes sour in a couple of days. And I think they digest it better, and it just makes it more valuable. It goes further to swell it. That was a common practice. I think a lot of people did it one time. They would soak their feed.
Let's go on to the next step of these intestines here. So I have these right here that I've scraped on the outside. Pretty well have them clean on the outside. So I'm going to turn them inside now. So my fingers are a little bit large, but you sort of get a hold of the end and you can see the opening in those intestines right there. And you take 2 fingers and you just sort of put it in there, and then you sort of spread your 2 fingers apart, and you see that cavity there, and you reach down and dip some of that salt water into it, and you start feeding this, and you keep dipping water, and you keep adding that to it, and that's going inside out. And then once I get them turned inside out, and this side that you're seeing now, that's the side where the feces were. And I'm going to scrape that again. And they're here in salt water being sterilized, purified in the salt water. And don't think there's no sign of feces or anything in them anymore. I might be a little bit too long here on this one. I don't know if I can handle that whole thing.
Keep going. It's nonstop.
And just keep feeding. Just keep putting water on there, and just keep doing this. Oh, I remember Mom and then my grandmother, my dad's mother, and my Aunt Tina, how they would do this. They would sit for hours when the intestines would come in the house. They would sit for hours cleaning this, because the next day then these intestines were used to put the sausage in, hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So what could you one hog would maybe make enough intestines to do 50 pounds of?
One hog generally had enough intestines to stuff its own meat.
Stuff its own meat.
If I remember
right,
yeah.
Yes. And so obviously the larger the hog, the larger the intestines. But right here's the end of it. And I'm going to let go of that now. And that is going to feed all the way through there. And that complete section of intestines
It's being
is
turned inside
out. When I start up here, I'm going to go about halfway and go this direction and start scraping and flush that salt water back out with it. And this, what you're seeing coming off there, that is the liner on the inside where the feces were. That was the liner that kept the feces separated from what I'm scraping on. It's actually quite amazing. And people think how gross. You end up with a piece of intestines that has never been touched by the feces. So Jeremiah
Okay, hold on. Yeah.
Jeremiah is cutting the bacon off from the ham. And you can sort of see a divide. Turn it a little more this way, Jeremiah. There you go. Yep. You can sort of see a divide in the meat there versus the ham fat. And Tim is going to help him hold that bacon. We're going to take it down in the basement. I think they're spreading them out on the table. And they're just going to chill out overnight. And then tomorrow, we're going to trim up those bacon and cure them. Now, the two pieces hanging there are the hams. All we're going to do, they're going to unhook those hams from where Eddie was earlier. He hooked those hooks into those tendons. And we're going to hang those down in the basement and let's let them cool overnight. And then tomorrow, we will process them. You can just take the hook with it, yes, yep. So Eddie's taking the pork chop there and that we just took off of the pig, and he's going to lay it on the table there and start trimming it up.
I think I may actually go ahead and take the ends of it off.
Okay, I'm going to go out here and get you a knife.
Is just cut the ends off, because your pork chops will start or stop right there, about right in there, and come up about so far. So we'll cut both of these ends off and then trim that fat piece off of the back there. That's good. All right.
Okay, I'm going to lay this back on the table, and those pieces that he's cut off there are going to be trimmed up a bit and going to make roasts out of those.
Yep.
What do you call that one?
That there's just the trimmings.
No, then the neck.
The neck.
The neck end. Is that knife cutting?
It's doing okay.
Would you try the other one, and I'll sharpen that one for you a little bit.
All right.
You go ahead and get a sharpener, and I'll sharpen that.
So we'll just, like I said, trim this fat piece off of here and get it down to the loin. While we do that, you want to try to be careful just to take the fat off and not get into your pork chop. See that loin right there? That's what makes up the pork chops. And there's kind of a dividing point there where you find that.
That knife doing okay?
It's doing fair.
Okay. I got another sharp one here for you if you need it.
I'm going to go ahead and take that little piece of the meat off there with it. Yeah, I'm getting into the loin. And that's good.
We're just going to spread that out on the table and let that cool overnight.
And then we'll also
And then
trim.
we're going to trim the fat off of that. I mean, the meat off of that and put that in the sausage. And then the fat is going to be taken off of the skin and put the fat in the cracklings.
Right. And then I will just look for things to trim up on it just to make it a neater job on when we slice the pork chops. The other thing we do, the next thing we do after we get this trimmed and ready to go, is we will lay that whole thing, this whole section of meat, in the freezer to chill it and get it good and stiff. Because you see how flexible everything is. It just works better if it's cold. Take a little bit more of this off right here.
I'm not sure why, but earlier we showed you it was just a regular carpenter's wood handsaw that Dad always used to split the hog in half like we did out there earlier. And then this saw is what would have been used to have cut all these bones off before we had the power saw. And that's actually a meat saw is what that is, with a stainless steel blade in it.
He did pretty good with a handsaw there, being able to cut those pork chops to thickness.
Yes. Yeah. And also back in those days, it would not have had a freezer to chill that meat.
Right.
Yeah, it didn't have that choice. And you don't have to go all the way to the end. There's the end. You can stop right there and re-rub it.
Okay.
And then come back here and scrape some more.
All right.
But you see that spot right there? Mm-hmm. I pulled too hard and I tore it off.
Okay.
So we're going to finish tearing it off, and this is just going to be a real short piece, and we're going to just clean that on out. Just go ahead and drop that back in the water.
So, tell us your name.
Brian Guenther. I'm Holly's brother, Mark's son.
Okay.
I am the oldest grandson of John Guenther. And just cooked up a little heart here. We're going to let it cool for a second and try it.
Now, is that something you like on it, or is it
Yeah.
just...
Yeah.
Does it kind of taste like a pork chop?
Sorta. We let you try it if you want. That's good. You sure you don't want some, Heather? Huh? Tim?
Just a tiny little piece.
There you go.
Are you sure it's cooked good?
Mm-hmm. It's cooked. It's cooked. Want some, Holly?
Not bad.
Huh? Well, your hands are messy, so better not.
Heather can give her a bite.
Yeah, here, Holly.
Jody, no.
Just a little bite. Here.
It's actually not pretty. Tastes like good. Heart, I guess. I don't know.
Okay, that probably tastes like good.
Here you go.
She
We're going
cheated.
to share with them.
Just spit it out.
I think Jody might like to try some. Would she?
That's
You sure
hard
you
to
want
say.
some?
She might.
Wait.
Here you go. There's your little piece in case you don't like it. If you like it, we'll give you some more.
What's the after flavor?
It's got just a little bit of a rubbery taste. Chewy, or a chewy.
It's burnt. You burn it.
He wanted to make sure it's good.
It's got more of a burnt taste.
That's probably why I can actually.
How's that?
You gave him a bigger piece than just the...
I'm
You
giving
think I'm gonna let you have the good part?
Jeremiah wants some heart.
Jeremiah wants some
Here.
heart. He gave me a burnt piece.
John said, okay, what do I do here at the end? What do I do at the
What do you
end?
think? He burned it, didn't he?
A little bit. Maybe that's a little bit better. Maybe.
Not really.
Not really.
Water, right?
Need to steady the jar for
Very nice treat here. Holly's brought us some homemade bread and homemade jam out here for a snack at the end of day one hog killing.
Let me catch you.
We got all the meat hanging in the basement, cooling off for overnight, and tomorrow we're gonna tear into it and make sausage and cured bacon and cracklins and
lard.
liverwurst, scrapple. Yeah, we'll have a big day tomorrow.
Pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Nice treat. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
Maybe it's more than that.
That's good. No, that's good. Thanks.
Anybody else?
Well, you can't beat that homemade bread.
Can't beat it with a stick.
What about Mr. John? Good.
Soak up some of that hard.
One might work a little better. Wider. Yeah. We need some more on there. Now there's about enough for one more piece of bread.
What's the weather going to be like tomorrow? Pretty? I know it's going to be cold in the
I
morning,
haven't
but
heard any forecast. I don't know. I know it's going to be cold in the morning.
let's get out down to 25 tonight, right?
But we're going to be inside. We don't care how cold it gets. We're going to have a fire going there, rendering lard, and
Down there in the basement.
down in the
all
basement. It'll be nice down there.
Now, does the women do anything in the kitchen different, or they work on anything else in there?
Well, we're gonna go in. We'll wash some jars in the house for the cracklins. Probably just preparing to bag up the meat and everything.
To bag it up and get it ready to put it in freezers. But that would also be something different that was done when we were growing up. You know, mom and dad did not have freezers. All the meat was canned. Yeah, canned all the meat.
Now, do you smoke tomorrow?
Yes.
Do you put some in there tomorrow?
No, we're
Okay.
going to put the link sausage that we're going to make tomorrow. We're going to put it in the smokehouse there and smoke it. And now we always did that. Yeah, they always did that.
I guess we'll get the bacon cured tomorrow too. won't we?
Yes. Yes, we're going to cure the bacon.
Now,
tomorrow.
how do you do that? Cure the bacon.
So-
what's that about?
in his mind, and it was approximately this, so much of this, and approximately so much of that. And when he first got sick with his cancer, it came to me one day that if we don't get some of this stuff written down, how he's been curing the meat, that it's going to be lost. And so he was actually butchering one of his hogs, and I came here and spent the day with him right down here in the same place where we're going to work tomorrow. And I said, we've got to know this a little bit, you know. And as he talked about these recipes and approximately so much of this and approximately so much of that, I wrote it down. And what I got written down has been fantastic. The recipes turn out so good. And we actually have it on paper. We have hard copies at home, and we make copies of it to bring over here that we use for the sausage, how to cure the bacon.
So that's the cure of the bacon. That's a mixture of spices.
It's a mixture of brown sugar, salt, and black pepper, and a little bit of cayenne pepper.
Okay. Well, now when did you mix all that together? You bring it, mix it in here.
Yes, we will mix that down here
Okay.
tomorrow, and he has a tub there that we're going to use, the same tub he always used, and that's where we're going to cure the bacon.
And cure it. You mean is that just the seasoning on it?
That is the seasoning on it, and we're going to leave that in that tub for 3 to 5 days, depending on the temperature of the weather, because we don't have a cooler. If it does warm up too much, we're going to get it out of the cure and hang it in a smokehouse and get it smoked so that it's preserved. But if it stays cool enough, we're going to leave it in there for 5 days, which is going to make better bacon because it absorbs those seasonings better. Then hang it in the smokehouse, and it's just excellent bacon.
Everybody loves bacon.
I would put it up against Benton's bacon.
I'll bring some from our last batch. We'll cook
Oh,
it tomorrow.
okay. You got some from? Okay, yeah,
Yes.
that'd be great.
We did just
Yeah.
put them out together.
That'd be people's favorite part, the bacon.
It is
Well, yeah,
fantastic.
the only problem is they won't be able to taste it.
Or smell it, right?
Right?
If I had my choice, I would make the whole hog into bacon. To heck with the pork chops. Right, Nathan?
I would too.
Yeah.
No, link sausage.
Link sausage is good too, yes.
Yeah.
The link sausage from the last
Hey, do we
batch
have
is
all the
awesome.
seasoning?
It is
If
good.
you cook it on the grill, it is, oh, it's
Yeah, the
good.
link
Yeah, it is.
sausage, yeah.
Yeah.
And that link sausage is made with those from where we were cleaning the intestines, yeah.